It was a very difficult passage, lots of waves, very, very high chop, very high winds. The boat was rocking all over. We were barely making any progress. It was raining. It was just terrible, a terrible day. And then all of a sudden we see a whale breaching right next to the boat and like, wow. And for 5 seconds, we are in complete awe of our surrounding and this experience. And then
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we have with us the sailing couple Ryan and Sophie from ryanandsophiesailing.com, right? That's the YouTube channel as well as the website.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. The name we thought a lot about.
That's really straightforward. Yeah, but I'm very interested to talk to you guys today because of some of the content I see you guys put out, which I'll say is a bit different from what I usually see from other channels. Not that I consume a lot of sailing content, but there's definitely some things that I would like to, see where we can get into. But before we start, let's have an introduction about both of you guys, because I know your backgrounds are very interesting as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Ryan, and I'm an American guy who ended up in Stockholm, where we're actually talking to you from today, and for a job, 10, 12 years ago. And I met Sophie 7 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm French. I have lived in Sweden for about as long as Ryan for the same reason. I came here to work and we met in 2015 on Tinder. I still can't believe that happened, but here we are.
That's
and
right.
A few months after we met, like we're talking 3 months after we met, Ryan approached me with an article. You know how you share like articles and links with your family and people that you like to talk to? Well, Ryan sent me an article about a couple who had sold everything they owned, bought a boat, quit their jobs, and started to sail. And I don't know, something went click. And we were like, oh, hell yes, we got to do that.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And so it took us a little bit of time to get geared up. We bought a boat and off we went to kind of explore the world.
Yeah, we didn't know anything about sailing in boats. So there was definitely some big learning curves there. We had to, when you know nothing about boats, it is an intimidating task. It was a lot for us, from learning to sail, buying the boat, then, quitting our jobs, which is also something that, when you've been settled your entire life is very daunting. And then eventually we left, and 4 years later, we're still doing it. And here we are.
Yeah.
I'm still pretty intrigued at how people jump into boat life, because I had another guest that was just recording another session the other day, and she had the same experience whereby she just saw, or the whole family saw the documentary, and then they just went into boat life, which I find surprising, because I can imagine that as you mentioned, if you don't know about sailing or you don't come from a background of sailing, there's kind of a lot of things to learn about. And when I hear stories about how nomads on the boats have to manage, for example, stay up at night at any point in time, someone has to be awake, right, to make sure everything is going well, right? So I'm like, oh, this is such a hassle kind of thing. Of course, I know the pros of it. I think everyone kind of enjoys the pros of it, but seems like there's a lot to take care of before going to boat life, right? So when you guys decided to take this route, how long did it take for you guys to transit from the idea to the execution?
It was 2 years.
Yeah, before we left. Yeah. So I would say we got the idea in the summertime.
3 years, actually.
Yeah, it was the summertime, but we would have jumped in, I think, even sooner, but I was injured at the time. So we couldn't even go take sailing lessons because I was not functional. I couldn't use my arm. So it took us about 6 months. And then we went and took some sailing lessons to see if we even liked sailing and if we could do it together and not kill each other. And then immediately after that, we went into boat buying mode. So we scoured around. We didn't know what we were doing or what we were even looking for, but we went out and we found a boat a few months later and bought it. And so we had it for the next sailing season here in Stockholm. And then our plan was always, we wanted to spend a year with our boat while also having a home, so we could get to learn it a little bit, fix up some things with it. And what we really learned was that we knew nothing. So we took a 2-week course, and what we learned was that 2-week course showed us how to take the line and wrap it around the winch. And that was it.
We bought the boat like we bought a car. Like we went out, we're like, oh, that one's nice. Let's buy that one. We didn't even have the skills to bring the boat back ourselves, because at the time it was located in the UK. So we hired people to do that for us. And the first year, it was a huge eye opener for us because we only spent 1 week on the boat, 1 week of sailing. And the rest of the summer, every single moment that we had free, working on the boat, cleaning, repairing,
Understanding,
upgrading,
I think.
trying to understand what was going on. Every time we went to the boat, we had to make at least one trip to the hardware store to buy tools or to buy supplies, at least one, because we would be at the boat after
I
going
need
to
this
the
tool.
and we're like, oh no, we need something else. We would go back to the hardware store and back to the boat. And and all in all, we were spending all of that money. And the first year we spent 1 week on the boat.
Yeah.
And it was more stressful than anything, really.
Yeah.
So,
it was
I'm curious,
sorry.
was the first boat a good purchase? Because I assume you guys bought it with like a half-ass knowledge of what looks good, right? Do you think you made the right decision in buying that boat, or do you like, if knowing what you know now, would you have bought another boat?
So we get very, very lucky. Okay. Like one of the reasons we're still here today is because 6 years ago, when we bought the boat, we got extremely lucky. I think that there was part luck, but also part because we knew nothing about the sailboat and the sailing aspect of the boat back then. We bought a boat that was comfortable, that felt comfortable, that gave us the motivation to live on board. And that's a huge aspect of our lifestyle. If it's not comfortable, you're probably not going to want to stay as long as you do. Where we got lucky was that the boat was in immaculate conditions, and there was no way for us to assess that because we knew nothing about boats. But we got a really good broker who was selling the boat on behalf of the owners, and a really good surveyor who takes a look at all of the nooks and crannies of the boat and tells you about the state. And both of those people were extremely helpful, had our backs, had our best interest at heart. And I think that to this day, we can credit them for how successful we are today, because you can end up with a boat that breaks all the time, that is not adapted to what it is that you want to do, that had a lot of hidden defects that you were not aware of. And we were able to skip all of that. So knowing then, if we knew then what we know now, I think that we would have appreciated more the type of luck that we were having. But I think we would make the same decision. Yeah, because it was a good boat for our money.
So bringing back to the audience, anyone who wants to start with this life, I reckon what you mentioned here is that basically if you are starting to buy a boat as a beginner, the best way is to find a good broker and a good surveyor, and that will kind of cover at least half of your ass. Is there any other things that you guys would recommend with the knowledge that you guys have now for someone that's buying a new boat?
Yeah. So the one thing that we always say, and that applies to anybody, whatever boat or budget you have and you work with, is that when you buy a boat, you buy a piece of the former owner. So you want to make sure that the person who had the boat before you is somebody who maybe shares the same philosophy as you, who is transparent about the problems that they've had, who is willing to help you understand certain functions of the boat, because sailboats are so customizable and customized that there is no standard manual for how they work. So it's not like you're going to get a big book with how all the functions of your boat work. You also want to make sure that the person that was the owner of the boat before you maintained the boat very well, had a good maintenance philosophy, and took a thorough record of when things were maintained, when things were upgraded, and when they were changed, what kind of problems you had. Because you inherit all of this. You inherit how well or poorly the boat was maintained. Best advice, anybody who's buying a boat, make sure that you know the owner, you have good contact with them, or at least that they took really, really good care of their boat.
Got it. Yeah, I guess that's important as well, for sure. But that already sounds a big hassle for me when I listen to it. Like, it takes so much effort to assess what's good and what's bad. And then, of course, and I'm not sure if this is a thing, but I think in travel, there's always like a fear of getting scammed, right? So you never know if you're really getting a good deal from the previous owner. So despite knowing all this, you still got to be careful of like all the other stuff that generally you have to take care of.
You've got to take your time. But I mean, look, like
we did not do that.
We did our due diligence. I'd say. But it is, you've said a couple times now, which I can reflect on and agree with to a point, that like it is a hassle sometimes. Like there are days that you get up and you just want to like go relax, and you're having to like fix the broken toilet so you can just take care of your stuff. And that is a hassle. But with travel, 70% of the world is water. And the only way to access that part of the world is by boat. And so, most of us can't afford to have a cruise ship take us around or a super yacht take us around everywhere. So the only way to do that
Still have your own.
is to have your own boat and explore. So if you really want to see the world, because you could say, well, it's just water and the water all looks the same, and but it's not true. We can be on the same body of water for a whole week, and every day is different. And it looks different and it smells different, and we experience different things. And so I think that hassle to experience so much of the planet is worth it. Yeah.
That's a very interesting perspective to look at it. I definitely agree. Like 70% of the world is actually water. So if you have access to that, that's definitely like an advantage to see some things that regular land travel might not give you, right? So
well, if I could just expand on that just quickly, I think that van life is to us sometimes is appealing, because if you live in a van or an RV, it's not going to move at night. I'm not worried about like my boat, my RV crashing into something or someone crashing into me, hopefully, in the middle of the night. But at the same time, you're kind of constrained by the fact that you're on a continent. If you're in North America, you can go to Canada, you can go to the US, maybe Mexico, but it's very difficult to take that thing and take it to Europe or to take it to Asia. And for us, we can take our home anywhere in the world as long as there's water by it. And then when we get there, we can have other ways to travel and explore. And I think that adds a lot of accessibility to the planet. So yeah.
That's it. How's your travel like schedule or itinerary like how? What would you say is the percentage of time you spend like on land, like exploring certain places versus like sailing in open sea?
Oh, that is a loaded question.
Is it?
It really depends. It really depends on where we are sailing and what the season looks like. Because, for example, a very popular destination is the Caribbean. A lot of us will go sail in the Caribbean. But you have to know that between June and November, it's hurricane season.
And it's very hot.
And it's very, very hot. And for a lot of boats, they are not insured for named storms and hurricane through that period in the Caribbean. So you have a certain amount of time to sail the Caribbean before you need to start going up north to avoid hurricane season. So we never want to say that we are on a schedule, because we don't want that. We want to have as much flexibility as we can. But at the end of the day, we have to be smart with seasonality, with weather patterns, and with insurance. So, you have to, there is no typical schedule. That's why I'm saying it's a loaded question.
But we in terms of like sailing and on land time, I would say, for every day that we sail, we probably are close to or on land, for 3, 4, 5 days.
Near land.
Yeah, like near land. So like, i.e., we're not sailing overnight, or we have the ability to go to shore and explore or hang out with friends and stuff.
Go to the beach.
But it very much depends. So like the start of this year, I was crossing the Atlantic by myself, and that was we ran into a few problems, but I was doing that project for like 2 months. I mean, it wasn't sailing full time 2 months, but I was in that mindset, and that was a very long period for me. So then when we got to the Caribbean, we're like, no, we're just staying on this one island. We're just going to hang out.
Well,
we're just going to slow down.
We also happen to have a lot of work, because we still have work to pay our bills.
But the point is that we just decided, well, we're going to slow down the sailing, and we're just going to enjoy where we are for a while, and our home will be here. So yeah.
Is it difficult to park your boat somewhere where there's a hurricane season? Like, let's say you miss the window, right? Can you still just dock it at that place and just, stay on land and wait it out? Or is it like dangerous to have it docked there? Because apparently if there's hurricane, it's still a bad weather to leave the boat exposed, right?
It really depends where you are again. So for example, earlier this year, we were sailing between Antigua and Bermuda. And Bermuda, we realized not a lot of people know where Bermuda is in the middle of the ocean, east of the US East Coast, south of Canada. And it is really far away from everything. It's tiny, tiny little thing. So we were sailing towards Bermuda. And all of a sudden, when we're in the middle of the ocean, in the forecast, 10 days from now, we see a hurricane going right over Bermuda. And we're like, oh, this is not good. But we had nowhere to go. There was nowhere for us to escape, because, well, at that time, I could not enter the United States because I was in the process of applying for a US visa. And until it was processed, I could not enter. Going to Canada was too far away, and there was no guarantee that the hurricane wouldn't change path and hit us while we were en route to Canada. So we ended up in Bermuda on anchor, and we rode the storm, which indeed passed over us for 24 hours. So yeah, it was not a fun day. Okay, I'll say that.
I gotta say, so I was watching some of your videos, right? And I'll say like, at least those I click. Of course, I didn't click on all of them, but I specifically look at those that looks very interesting from the thumbnail, right? Half of the videos I saw seems particularly dangerous in the sense. It's like the camera is always like, and then there was that one that you're cooking and then the whole stove is like rocking this way. And I was like, oh, holy shit, this looks crazy. And I think a lot of it is from the Atlantic crossing. Apparently, like that's not an easy route to cross, right? So I was looking at that, I was like, shit, this thing looks extremely difficult to manage. Or a life like that seems, I assume you're always on edge because you are exposed to external environmental factors which are never like fully predictable, right? Yeah. So we're talking about like one of the things that you guys talk about a lot, and I definitely appreciate because not a lot of people talk about this, is that the boat life is not all fun because of course everyone imagine, wow, boat life, yeah, forever summer, you're sipping cocktails on the beach and stuff like that. But there's a lot of maintenance going on throughout the whole journey, which like not a lot of people talk about. What do you guys think are the biggest challenges that you guys have faced, throughout this 4 years of sailing?
Wow. Again, a loaded question.
I think that like you're absolutely right. One of the things you do very well, Sophie, is showing the
when hits the fan.
That's right. It isn't all cocktails on the beach, and I don't think there's anything that people can do in life that is like that, where you're just going to go away and it's going to be perfect forever. Yeah. It's never like that.
Nobody goes to the office being like, this is going to be so much fun every day, all day long. Or even, I cannot wait for this.
Even when you go on a vacation nowadays, you're flying somewhere and you got to go through the crappy airport and deal with the crap. It's like there's always something. There's always a downside to everything. And I think that social media these days portrays life. Everyone wants to portray life as like they're living this great thing all the time. And it's just simply not true. So
it's not realistic.
It's not realistic. Yeah.
It's a part of the truth.
We definitely experience very well. How I like to say it is this: the sailing life is just like the land life. You have really good days and you have really, really bad days. What's different in the sailing life is that it's exacerbated a lot. So the highs that you experience are really, really high compared to land life. You get to see things like whales jumping out of the water. You get to meet people from all over the world. The beautiful sunsets, like the highs are really, really high.
At corners of the planet that you have never heard of. Heard of. We arrived in northern Spain one day, and we had made landfall after a pretty difficult crossing of the Bay of Biscay, which is notorious and infamous. And when we arrived, we started seeing a landscape and we weren't sure if it was mountains or if it was clouds. And it turns out it was mountains, because in northern Spain, there are fjords. And it's the most amazing thing ever. Northern Spain is incredible.
We had no idea. And so that part's been just amazing because it has been really high, but the lows are really, really low. You can be the middle of the night. You've had like a couple nights of bad sleep.
You vomited for 5 hours straight. Because that's the thing.
But you're like in the middle of the night on anchor. All you want to do is get a good night's sleep. And you're up at 3 a.m, standing on the deck in your underwear and you're in the rain because somebody's hit your boat or like the anchor's dragging. And, and you're dealing with that, knowing that you might have to be up in a few hours for something else. And that's really hard sometimes, I'd say. It's hard to keep going.
But the highs keeps you going. And what's really interesting with this lifestyle is that sometimes the high and the lows, they happen at the exact same time. So one day we were sailing between a small archipelago south of Guadeloupe called Les Saintes up to the eastern point of Guadeloupe. It was a very difficult passage, lots of waves, very, very high chop, very high winds. The boat was rocking all over. We were barely making any progress. It was raining. It was just a terrible day. And then all of a sudden we see a whale breaching right next to the boat and like, wow. And for 5 seconds, we are in complete awe of our surrounding and this experience. And then
back at it.
And then the whale disappears and it's shitty again.
There's something I'm very curious about. And I think like maybe a lot of noobs like me would assume is that if someone has done the boat life for so many years, they most likely wouldn't get seasick. But apparently from all the people that I've spoken to that have done boat life, seasickness is a very real thing, even for the experienced people.
Yeah, it's a thing. So I got seasick for the first time when we learned how to sail. That was 7 years ago. I am still seasick. The difference is that now I can manage it. So I know what can trigger seasickness and how I can get rid of it. So before I could get seasick for a few days and feel really bad and be very, very impacted by it. And now when I'm seasick, I know exactly what to do and I can get rid of it fairly quickly. It's drastic. It's not always pleasant. It takes a bit of preparation, but it works.
Yeah. And like for me, I didn't really have a problem with seasickness in the early years, but this year, for some reason, I don't know what it is. I've actually struggled more with seasickness.
It's old age.
Maybe it's my old age. I don't know, but I've struggled more. I don't get as sick as Sophie. So I guess I'm still blessed with that, but I've struggled more with it this year. So I've been a lot more aware of it. So yeah, it is definitely something, you're in bad conditions when the old salty sailors are throwing up over the side as well, because that can happen. Yeah.
I'm just curious, what are some of the solutions you guys use that is like, very more effective in preventing seasickness or recovering from it?
Yeah. So first off, setting sail on an empty stomach or hangover, that's a bad idea. That's the highway to seasickness hell. So you need to make sure that you have your blood sugar is under control, that you're not hangover, you are well hydrated, you're well rested, and you are dressed for success. Meaning that you should not be too cold or too warm. Like if you're going to be cold out sailing, it can really accelerate seasickness. A lot of seasickness, sadly, is a bit psychological because you're so afraid of it that you're almost looking for the symptoms. So that's not great. But once you're there, if you start feeling a little queasy, the best thing that you can do is to eat a little bit, even if that feels counterintuitive because you start being nauseous. If you can't eat solids, you can at least eat liquid or eat soup. And then if you are really, really nauseous, the best thing that you can do is to let it go, let it go overboard.
Because you'll feel a bit better.
Because it's like, when you let it out, you have this 5 minutes window where you're not seasick anymore, you're not nauseous. And that's when you need to put a little more sugar in your bloodstream. And usually take a little nap and take a reset and do that a few times if you need. And that's how you get over seasickness. I told you it's not pleasant, but it works.
Were there times that both of you are seasick at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but typically...
One time we were 4 people on board and we were all seasick at the same time.
Yeah, I don't tend to throw up though. So I'm usually the guy that gets to keep pushing through.
I do both. I can both throw up and continue.
Yeah, it's we've had a few times it's been a bit hard to manage, but usually after a couple of days, if we're sailing offshore, it will go away.
Yeah,
and you can you're fine after that. But yeah,
because I was imagining, I don't sail a lot, obviously, and the last time I've been on a boat at least was at least a big boat. It was like a cruise ship, that's an expedition ship that was crossing the Drake Passage, which is passage into Antarctica, right? And that's the crazy passage.
That's
and even though it was
material.
that's like such a big boat. And apparently the captain or team leader was still saying that you guys were lucky because this wasn't like the worst. But the whole freaking boat was like, and I had problem even just like eating, in the sense of like I could eat, but it was such a hassle to even eat because you're trying to eat and then the boat is going like this way. And which is why I was seeing you cook and I was like, I don't know how the hell she's cooking like when the boat is swaying this way. Yeah, then there were like warm meat bags like every 5 steps along the way around the whole boat. Yeah, and that was like really awful. Yeah, so I was like, how do you even maintain that?
That's sad.
Like,
you just learn like we always have to kind of get back into the rhythm of it. And you've been off the boat for a little while, Sophie. So the next time we go for a big sail, you're probably gonna
no, that's in a while.
Yeah,
it's gonna be in a while.
We'll have a little struggles there, but it takes a little bit of time to get back into the flow of it. And usually after a couple of days, we just know that we know that we're going to go in the ocean offshore for a multiple day thing. It takes a few days just to get into it, and that we don't try to fight it anymore. You have to just know that this is how it is. The ocean's in charge, and we just need to. We got to deal with it and work with it and adapt.
With that being said, there is a lot of preparation that goes into it. So for example, we know that usually in the first 2 or 3 days, we're going to be a lot more tired. We're prone to seasickness. So we usually, before we depart, we have all the meals already cooked. So it's just a matter of throwing them on the stove to warm them up. I'm not cooking in the first 3 days because we need to focus on other things. So I'll usually have most of the meals prepared.
Yeah.
And then, well, our stove is gimbaled. It's mounted on a gimbal. So it
Yeah,
moves,
sorry.
it
That looks
it
pretty
stays
awesome,
level.
to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It works well.
it's
Yeah.
really cool. And then we have a really nice fridge capacity. So we're able to keep a lot of fresh food in our fridge and freezer. And that makes a huge difference. Like on our latest Atlantic crossing, we were able to have ice cream. And that's
Yeah, having
nice.
little things like that's really nice.
Having a pint of Ben and Jerry's in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, it's nice.
That perks you
That
up.
sounds good. Right,
Yeah.
right. Will you say that anticipating it actually makes the experience better even when you get hit by it? Because I tend to have motion sickness myself, even on buses. But when I know it, I know that the path is going to go like this. I know that, okay, shit, I'm
Yeah.
going to get motion sickness. But what I do is I will usually pop a pill or something that makes me slightly drowsy. But it's fine for me because I'm not driving, right? Like I'm sleeping.
Yes.
But for you guys, you can't just pop a pill and go to bed because you're the sailors, right?
No.
So does knowing it actually make it better, or you still feel like shit when it hits?
We use medication that does not make you drowsy. It's a patch. It's a prescription drug, so you can't get it over the counter. You have to get a prescription from your doctor. It's called Scopoderm. It's a scopolamine patch, and it does not make you drowsy. But you really need to be on the clock and put it at least 6 hours before you depart. So usually we will put it before we go to bed on the day before we depart. So again, it's all about the preparation. And in terms of the anticipation, we don't usually get too nervous, because if we get too nervous about a passage, we just make the decision not to go. We've never felt forced to go and take a passage that felt dangerous. And there are many times where we went out, the conditions were not good, or all of a sudden there is a new risk factor that pops up. So for example, our latest passage, one of our crew members tested positive for COVID.
Ooh.
And so we turned back, like no passage is mandatory. Or as you say in aviation, takes off are optional, but landing is mandatory.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So we never feel pressured to depart or to continue a passage when the conditions are really bad.
Yeah.
Got it. Let's talk a bit about this life on the boat and all this thing, right? Like after the whole conversation, the first half of the conversation, obviously there's like a lot of things to prepare, and I assume like life on the boat can get tough. Because when certain things happen, then you're like, oh shit, I need to manage that, manage this. How this is my assumption because I've never stayed with someone else on a boat for like a long period of time. But is it difficult to manage the relationship when you guys are like 2% on such a small area for a long period of time? And how do you guys balance
Absolutely.
It was something that we didn't really consider so much before we left. But now we always tell people that before you leave on a trip like this, there's 3 things. You need to find a good boat. You need to figure out how you're going to pay for your life. And you need to learn how to manage your relationship and your mental health. Those are like the 3 keys to success for this. And the third one is often forgotten. It's often forgotten just normal life. I'd say.
And also, there are not a lot of tools out there to help you navigate, because not a lot of people really talk about how difficult it can be for a romantic relationship when you live on board in an environment that can be so triggering at any point in time. The boat has this thing where it breaks at any time, usually at the most inconvenient moment. So you live in this environment that's very triggering. And then you start feeling all of the roles in your partner's lives. So if you compare it to a traditional life on land where, you see your partner in the morning, in the evening, and in the weekends, and in between you go to work and you see your friends and you have your activities, maybe you go to the gym and you work out. On the boat, you do all of those things with your partner. The waking up in the morning, the working, the seeing friends, the working out. Like you're on top of each other all of the time.
So we've tried to, so like you are everything to your partner, but you also need to have your own life, which is something. So I try to like equate this to people. When you live on land and have normal jobs, you maybe see your partner for like half an hour in the morning. You have breakfast, you're getting ready for work, you leave. You're at work, so you're typically apart from each other 8 or 9 hours a day. And then you have some maybe extracurriculars after work. You go play sports with the guys, or, you have your own clubs or something. So maybe you see each other for a couple hours at night, and then you go to bed and you do it all over again. And then you see each other on the weekends for a bit. And that's life. So it's actually not that much time that you spend together if you add it up in a week, because you're sleeping and you're working and all this. But for Sophie and I, we are together 24/7 nonstop. We work together on the boat. We are each other's counterparts when we're sailing. We're crew members to each other.
We're colleagues.
We're colleagues. We have to be best friends to each other.
We're each other's nurses and psychologists.
Yeah. So it's a lot.
Sometimes you're the emotional punching ball.
So it's a lot. It's a lot. And so what we've learned is that sometimes in the boat, you just go and you make your own space, or sometimes you go to land. And sometimes when we meet friends, you'll go and have a girls' day. I'll have a guy's day with the people that we meet. But then one of the best things that we've done in the last year and a half is we've started taking our own extended breaks. So
this is going to sound controversial.
But so Sophie's gone to France. Sophie's gone to France by herself for a month or two, and I've gone to the US by myself. And people are like, "Oh no, are they breaking up? Whatever." And we're like, "No, we just need to."
Are you guys separated?
No, we just need our space. We all of that time that you bank up at work and at night when you're away, we don't have that. So we bank that up and we use that all at once. Going off on our own, and that helps because it gives us the ability to come back and to go away, make stories, make our own experiences, and then come back and share that with each other. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important.
Yeah. 1 year of relationship on land equals 7 years relationship on the boat. That's how intense it is.
Maybe that's the other way around. 1 year on the boat is like 7 years on land.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, we understand.
But okay. This is very interesting because I think 2 points that when I heard about what you guys are saying, one is that if I compare it, even if we are not talking about the general couple, right? Let's say a traveling couple that is spending a lot of time together because they're moving on land together, and then maybe they're working at a co-working space and everything. The ease of it is that if at any time they are so-called tired of each other, you can just go and spend the day doing whatever you want, right? You can be like, okay, I'll go and do what I want. You can go and do what you want. But you guys are stuck on the boat, so you can't really be separated too much. That's one thing that I thought was really, really a step further. And also what you were saying, it's really that you are each other's emotional support. And normally in a regular life, we always say that you want to take care of your own emotional health, then you can be a support to your partner, right? But for you guys, as you mentioned just now, the lows can be really low at times when you're sailing. Right. So when you're low, both of you are probably not at the best mood, obviously, because you're like, shit, this whole freaking thing is shaking like crazy and then things are breaking apart. And then having to maybe cope with each other's so-called worst self, it's a very challenging task, I imagine. But I can also foresee that this strengthens the relationship a lot when you get past it.
Well, I think you said the key word there, when you get past it. You said that right at the end.
Exactly.
And that's the hardest part. So
because in the meantime, it's not always graceful. Okay, we're going to put it out there. We do not always handle hard emotional moments with a lot of grace.
Yeah, we don't. But we've also known that, and I think that we as a couple have tried to work on that a bit and work on ourselves. It doesn't always work out as we worked on it.
We're not role models.
We don't consider ourselves role models. But the thing that we do is that we talk about it very publicly. Because the fact is that there are a lot of people that set off to do this life. They don't realize that this is such a hard thing. This relationship aspect and this mental health aspect is such a hard thing. And sailing the boat is easy. It really is. Sailing the boat is easy. It's all of these other things that come with it. And this is a really big part of that. So if you can make it through, if you can forgive each other, if you can learn to
or if you understand, why, because sometimes you end up in arguments that have very little to do with the other person, but are more like an emotional release.
Mm-hmm. And if you can understand what's going on.
And if you can understand that in this moment, you were not your best self because you had an emotional release, then you can move on. You're like, okay, this was really bad. I was not my best self. This was a very hard moment for everybody. Let's just move on. And that's happened a lot.
Mm-hmm. I just want to throw this out. I'm not sure if it's going to be useful for you guys, but I heard about this. It's obviously not useful for me because I'm not attached. But there was this podcast I heard from this guy that, so basically there's him and his wife, right? And sometimes they get into debates across business stuff or anything, but they have this coin that they each hold. I think on the coin it writes something like "I love you" or something like that. Mm. And so both of them each have an understanding that whatever they do, they love each other, and it always stems from the love for each other when they make decisions or when they come to a certain point. But that might not always be, agreeable for both parties, right? But when they start arguing and they realize that it's getting like very heated, or there's like no real conclusion to this, they will hand the coin to each other. And then they will know that, and then you will like go back to basically from the emotional mind of debates to the practical sense of understanding. Regardless what we are debating about, the decisions or the perspective that we're putting in is stemming from the love of each other.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
I wish I was that big of a person.
I think though that now that you say that, I'm just thinking about some recent discussions we've had. And I think that we have that understanding. And sometimes it is interesting because we'll be very heated about something and something just clicks with us and we're like, okay, that was bad. We really love each other. That was a bit bad. Let's just stop and like because it is, it's interesting in a home in which Sophie and I have lived together, but not for very long. And it was at the very beginning of our relationship. So that's the easy part. But when you're on the boat, it's very difficult to go somewhere if you're in an argument. So if you're in a house and in a community that you have shared, or in a community that you have a big support network, and you can walk away from the discussion, go hang out with a friend, have some time to like rethink and talk about it. We don't have that. We don't have that space to go. We don't have that strong support network that follows us around. So we have to be that to each other too. So you really have to take it up like a lot. You have to be a bigger person very fast, and that's not always easy.
I can see you guys obviously have the practical understanding of it, right? So it's always like the heat of the moment, it's always hard to like suppress that, and having like a physical token or something that symbolizes that makes it a very easy action to basically calm yourself down. I think that's like the point of it, because you guys obviously know the practical side of it, that this is like just part and parcel of it.
The practicalities we've got figured out. I think it's the execution we're still working on. So we're really practical when we're calm. It's just that we still got one more element we're trying to get through.
So Ryan, I have a question for you, and that I think this will determine if you are sleeping in a room tonight. So you spoke about sailing the Atlantic Ocean yourself a few months back, right? So was it better? Do you find it better sailing yourself, or do you find it better sailing with Sophie?
It's a great question, and I'm going to start that by saying this. There's a series of videos we put out about that trip, and that trip was I think that series of videos was very good, and that trip was a very challenging trip for me because of some things that happened on it. And this is the same when Sophie and I are sailing together. We are never alone. We're physically alone on the boat, either her or I, but you're never alone. So we always have some type of shore support with us. They're helping us out. It's somebody we can call. It's a weather router. But Sophie was my shore support through that trip, and I don't think I would have made it all the way across without her.
Do you prefer me as shore support?
No. The question was, so
this is the couch.
No, I do prefer sailing with Sophie for a lot of reasons. Yes. Was that a really good trip for me? It was. Would I like to do more solo things, not necessarily on the boat? I would, but the majority of my like traveling and the experiences I have, I would like to do with her, because I think it adds an element to it. It's better to share, because so many things happen on my solo trip that while we have it on video, some of it on video, nobody will, even Sophie, who is just a phone call away, they'll ever understand that experience that I had ever. And it's just much better if somebody's there, because all of a sudden we have all these other things that we have.
Yeah, you have somebody to share the experience with, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience.
Yeah.
I agree. I have zero interest in trying something solo, because half of the fun is to share it with somebody else.
For sure.
Yeah.
It was an experience I'm very glad I did, though, for a lot of reasons. It changed my outlook on the world. Yeah. But it wasn't the easiest thing either. So
I think there's two sides of the coin, because I travel solo a lot of the times, but there's always a difference between I think there's so many points I want to touch on here, but let me try and collate it. Basically, when you travel solo, right, the most superficial thing is that sometimes you're seeing a particular scenery and you're like, well, I'm just sitting here alone looking at maybe the most beautiful sunset ever, right? And then you'll want someone to kind of share it with you. But there's also the thing whereby when you are traveling as a couple or with a group of friends, the perspective is often different from when you're traveling solo, because when you're traveling solo, you're seeing the world, I think, mainly from your own perspective. But when you're traveling with a couple or group of friends, you're seeing it through kind of a bubble kind of vibe in that sense, right? So seeing that both of you has gone off for like some solo travels for a bit, what do you think is the biggest difference that you guys felt between, like, you know, going around yourself versus as a couple?
I think the memory making, right? So you get to experience something that really marks you. And then a couple of months or years down the road, you can look at the person and, you know, remember it. Oh, do you remember that night when we were anchored by ILSCS and that sunset and then the dolphins that came and how peaceful it all was? And then you can project yourself back in that place with a person. And I think that's very powerful. And over the last 4 years, we've had so many opportunities to do that and to remember, create memories together. I think that's very strong.
I think I've done solo traveling, just like with a backpack and stuff as well. This was before I met Sophie, but one of the things that I just find different and nice about traveling with somebody is that in this context, I agree with everything you said, Sophie. But on a practical side, like, I need Sophie with me. And you know what I mean? No,
what would you be without me?
No, but I do. I really do. Like, there's so many things that we are so codependent on.
I feed him.
That's true. No, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes, no, but it's true. I mean, it's the same for me. The boat life takes so much work. It is a lot of work because the boat needs constant care and constant attention. And we would not be able to do as much as we do if we were not two people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would have no life.
So there's a practical element of just needing each other.
Yes.
But there's also this very emotional element of it's just wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun.
Yeah. I'm curious about this part. The practical aspect is obviously understandable because obviously 2 pairs of hands are always better than a pair, right? But I like to dive deeper into this emotional support kind of thing because it seems very interesting. Let's wrap it this way together with the fact that when you are traveling, I think I heard you guys speak about this before, and I totally agree, is that when you start traveling long term, you realize that you are not actually discovering the world, you are discovering yourself. Like the longest journey or the deepest journey is the journey within yourself, right?
Yes.
And I start to realize that even now, if I'm not traveling, I constantly discover myself internally every day based off the experiences. But travel was the thing that set the tone for it to make me look into myself, right? So as a couple, when you guys, after like 4 years of experience together and travel is in the sense that if your travel is always comfy, then there's not as much discovery, right? Like you really discover more about yourself when things get tough or things are uncertain, or you experience when shit hits the fan, right? So after 4 years, is there a very big change in the perception of either understanding yourself and the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, we have changed as people.
Oh yeah,
you know,
huge changes.
If you know, just started that way, our experiences have shaped who we are now as people. We would not be who we are without the 4 years of full-time traveling on a sailboat. These days, we are much more chill, I would say. We work still a lot. We are still very, very hardworking people. But in terms of how we react to what surrounds us, we're a lot more chill. In terms of, I was a very materialistic person. I always found a lot of pleasure in buying things, acquiring things, owning things. And I am not that at all anymore. I do not find pleasure in buying shoes anymore, it's so weird to say. We're not that. And in terms of self-discovery, I think that we found that I can take a lot more than I believed.
Yeah, like humans are much stronger than ourselves.
We have a resilience that I didn't know existed. And I'm saying this, just coming out, like we're talking this morning, of a 3 years long battle with US immigration, during which I did not have access to the United States. And it was a very long, very expensive, very invasive process to get a green card. And a lot of sacrifices on the way, a lot of compromises, a lot of, it really impacted our life. But through it all, I was, doing really well. I was doing quite okay. It wasn't very pleasant, but.
Well, and I think, sorry. I'm sorry.
But it was fine. But then when we finally get the decision that, the green card was approved. I get my visa back this morning. So I have my passport. I can travel now for the first time since 2019. And I cried for 2 hours straight. And I realized that, it was a lot more difficult than I wanted to admit it to myself. But when we're in the thick of it, we'll always prioritize solutioning, resolving situations, making the most out of the situation. And it's afterwards that we have the emotional release. And we're like, okay, that was bad. We made it.
My biggest takeaway, I think, from the whole thing that's changed me is that I have learned, this is on the boat, but also just like in normal business travel and pleasure travel and stuff, that 99.9% of people on this planet are just like you and me, and they all want the same things. They want to have safety, food, friends, feel valued. They all just want that. And we are, as a human population, we are all the same, trying to seek the same thing, regardless of how we look or how we talk or what God we pray to. It's all the same. And I think that travel is the thing that will allow you to realize that. And so people who don't travel just don't have that emotional experience behind it. And that's probably the biggest way I think I've changed.
You develop a lot more solidarity when you travel.
Yeah.
Than when you are out fending for yourself, chasing the next pay raise.
Yeah.
I think when you start traveling and you start seeing a lot of different people and interacting with them, you start to realize that maybe humans are not like totally different, even though there is like different identities and there's diversity, but perspectives can be different, but the goal kind of is almost the same, right? Like everyone wants that happiness, everyone wants that safety net of survival. Yeah, I think that you just learn that very quickly through travel. I think like it just forces you into that particular sport very quickly. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the practical things, because you guys spoke about finances as one of the main how to feed yourself, right? Your lifestyle basically as one of the key points to find success. I think that is always interesting and important and very practical to talk about. So hearing from you guys, let's start with a overview of what you guys do, because I know both of you are actually doing different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this year in particular, we are doing a lot. So baseline, I am a content creator, and we have a YouTube channel, Ryan and Sophie Sailing, and all of the associated platforms. So a website, Instagram, Facebook, everything. YouTube, obviously. And on the side, I started being a consultant this last year, and I help companies develop programs to help their employees create their own learning content. So I'm like a content creation coach or educator.
It's a pretty good niche for you.
And the biggest project that we have right now, which is almost a job in itself, is that we are developing a course for people who are interested in starting to sail the world and who come from scratch, from zero, that guides you through, what are the steps, what you should know, how to buy a boat, how to equip a boat, how to research destination, how to plan a voyage, what the lifestyle looks like. And we've been working on it since December. It comes out in November, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work.
Oh, that's like almost a year.
Yeah, it's a big thing that we're putting together. So yeah, you do a lot of content. I help a little bit with some of the content.
You do?
More and more these days, but I'm not the creative person in this group. So so I help with that. And then I have a company that I helped start many years ago that we make lithium batteries. So it's not even that exciting, but I'm able to do my job in that business from the boat. But it's a full-time job. So, I'm doing that. We're sailing around the world. We're trying to maintain the boat, which is almost a full-time job. We're trying to create content for it. So this year especially has gotten
we've been busy.
Very busy.
Yeah. I can see so, because of course I don't know anything about the lithium battery company because I don't see anything about that. But in terms of the content creation, I see that you guys are filming in the craziest situations that when things are swaying to and fro and you're still filming, that definitely takes a lot of effort, right? Yeah. But how do you guys, and it's for both a remote work company versus a content creation site, how do you balance, your work stuff with the maintenance of the boat and the travel schedule? Because like we say, sometimes it's unpredictable. You might be changing things, and I assume most of the time you probably need internet or good internet if you're trying to upload videos and those kind of things. How do you manage between those three things?
So how do we balance? Well, we don't.
We're still figuring that out. When we get it figured out, we'll call you back.
No, it's not completely true, and it's not completely fair either. There has been a point this year where we were working so much that we were wondering, what is the point of living on a boat in a beautiful place if all we're doing here is to work? But the reality is that we love what we do. We have come to this place where we love our work, and so we're willing to do that. And then our best tool to get a bit of balance in that is to take a break from the boat. And it's also a pretty controversial topic because, why would you need a break from living the dream when you live on a boat in a beautiful island? But boat life can be very overwhelming at times and triggering. And sometimes it's nice to go back to predictability and take some time off the boat, a month or two, be able to flush the toilet with the press of a button, put the dishes in the dishwasher, do the laundry whenever you want, and not having everything fall apart and break on you all the time, not having to wake up at 3 a.m. because there is a sudden change of wind and you need to make sure that your anchor is still set. So the best thing that you can do to balance is to now and then take a break on land and go back to the boat refreshed.
This is a very interesting point, particularly when you talk about the taking a break and it being a controversial topic, right? I think tying back to what Ryan was saying just now, ultimately, I still believe that, look, I'm traveling and I do mainly land. You guys are traveling and you do mainly on the ocean, right? The goal actually is the same. The goal is a lifestyle that we like and maybe the freedom of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The goal is not to be on the boat for 4 years, nonstop. The goal is basically to have the freedom to choose if you want to be on the boat. And that's actually what you guys are doing, right? There's no... And I think this applies to a lot of people who maybe want to start and now are worried that, hey, there's so much things to do, right? The idea is that you don't have to commit to it and go for it for 4 years, right? You can try out for 1 year, you can try it out for 3 months and decide if you actually like it, right? And ultimately, the goal that I think a lot of people or travelers have, or the guests that I have on, the goal is ultimately the freedom of choice rather than a specific lifestyle that is like everyone gets that happiness from their own version of lifestyle, even the non-travelers. Right.
Exactly. I think that when you start feeling stuck in the 9 to 5, maybe the solution for you is not necessarily a boat. But yes, it's living with intention. It's knowing what you're doing and why you are doing. Not everything is always fun, but if you do it with intention because you know what it is that you want ultimately, then it makes it a lot easier and fun.
Yeah.
And will you guys still say internet is the biggest challenge, or are there something else as opposed to internet for?
No, we manage the internet fairly well.
We go to places where we have internet, and you'd be surprised how good of a 5G infrastructure or a LTE infrastructure you get in some of those Caribbean islands. It's pretty good.
What is our biggest issue is
time zones?
No, time zones is a challenge because we work all over the world, but I would say logistics in general is sometimes a challenge. We might need to get a part brought in because the island doesn't have what we need, and it's a hazardous material part, so we can't actually fly it in. It has to go in on a ship. So you become not only a sailor, you become a logistics ninja and trying to figure out how to navigate getting a part ordered in one country, getting it sent to a ship, and then having that brought down, and then having to get through the customs, and then find the port where it's coming in. It's and we've done that a few times, and it can be, or sometimes, you need to have the part meet you at an island because just how timing's working out. And so it can just be really,
sometimes you hire your friends to transport a part from you.
Sometimes you have to have a friend bring it down on an airplane. So,
oh gosh.
Yeah, that's probably the most challenging, I would say, part.
There's
logistics is a bit hard sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds like a real hassle. I mean, I've heard about cases for just the normal folks on okay, my MacBook is faulty, and then I need to try and get it repaired in, say, South America, which is almost impossible or crazy expensive. Then I need to get it sent from the States. And then when the customer try and pass through, and then they are holding back your laptop, and then you're shit, this thing is my life money making tool, and I'm not having a freaking thing. And yours is even worse because now you have to sail and go to different ports to even collect the thing.
The other issue we have traveling internationally like this is, most international travelers will experience the issue with power, having a different plug type, this. Well, we have it on a whole different level because sometimes we go into a marina and we need to charge up the boat. We can't actually use the power there because it's a different voltage, it's a different plug. sometimes, you have metric versus standard. Sometimes like we'll need to buy a piece that screws into another piece, but that country uses a different thread type versus the thread type that we originally bought it from. And there's all these like standardization things that just on a global level, it's not standard and we have to deal with it. So we have to find solutions, and sometimes we have to make our own parts, and it's, but it's fun at the same time. So
we wouldn't do it if there wasn't a big reward at the end of it. And there absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's a fun life. And let's
I mean, hearing from you guys is making me rather curious, because again, like after speaking to you guys, there's obviously a lot of hassle that you have to, hurdles and obstacles that you have to go through. So definitely there's something that's attractive for you guys to continue doing it for like 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So what's the plan like after, now that you guys have done like 4 years of sailing? Is there like a change in lifestyle based off like just where your careers or where your relationship is at? Or is it going to be more the same?
The biggest thing right now is that we finally sorted my immigration troubles, and that we can enter the United States. We're very close to Ryan's family, and it's been really difficult to be away from the country for so long. So the first thing that we're doing it on Thursday. We're flying to the US. We're going to meet with Ryan's family. And then we're actually taking a little break this winter.
We're going to take a bit of a sailing break. The boat needs a little bit of a rest.
Yes, the boat needs to be hauled out every so often so that the hull can dry. Otherwise, it can develop bad
blisters and stuff. So
yes.
We need to do some painting on it, some underwater work, and we're going to give it a rest and give ourselves a rest. And then,
but the biggest thing that's happening, the biggest lifestyle change,
we have a new crew member
in a couple of weeks, and we're going to get a doggy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I
thought you were talking. Okay. I was like, doesn't seem so, but okay.
No, we're going to get a dog. So we'll have a new travel companion that will come with us on our boat. And yes, people do sail all around the world with dogs.
Yeah, we are child free by choice, but we really wanted a dog, so this is going to be the child.
Yeah, and then next year we're gonna sail in the U.S. and Canada. So we're gonna go up into the Great Lakes and then around and go up into Nova Scotia and stuff and back. So yeah, should be a good year.
Yeah, up north should be fun. What? Just curious, what triggered the desire to suddenly get a dog aboard the boat?
We've had that for a while.
It's always been on the bucket list. I like colder weather sailing, and I like going to places that are maybe not as popular of cruising grounds. And Lake Ontario is a fantastic, really underrated place to sail and to explore. Between Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, there is an archipelago called Thousand Islands, which is beautiful. And then the St. Lawrence itself, you're sailing through Quebec, Quebec City, Montreal. When you exit, there are whales. The sceneries are absolutely stunning. And then going down, you go back to Nova Scotia, which is also an incredible place to visit.
But I think he was asking about the dog. What inspired us to get a dog? No, we've always wanted a dog. We just wanted to add some more excitement to our life.
No, we've always wanted to have a dog.
Is it going to be a big dog or like a small puppy?
No, you want a smaller dog.
No, it's a small puppy.
This is a small dog. Yeah.
Here, I'll show you. I know that for the people listening, this is not maybe as fun, but this is how the dog looks. It's a tiny
This is the exact dog. Like you guys already selected the dog.
This is our dog.
The dog even has a name. We are picking her up in 2 weeks.
Oh, is it adopted or like what are you guys doing?
No, it was born. Yeah.
Yes.
From a mother. And
there was a litter that was born on the 14th of August, and we knew that we wanted a dog as soon as we would arrive in the United States. And so I was like, all right, this is the dog. She even has a name. Her name is Barnacle.
Well, definitely sounds like you guys had this on the bucket list for a very long time. Seeing the urgency that you guys are doing this. Okay, let's wrap up with a few quick fire questions.
Okay.
For you guys, right? Where's your favorite travel destination so far?
Portugal.
Portugal's been good. Portugal's islands as well, like the Azores and Madeira.
Everything
great.
Portugal.
Yeah.
Okay. When's the season for Portugal to sail there?
All year. You can sail there all year. That's what's great.
Sounds good. Cool. What are 3 of the most useful items that's not very obvious for boat life that you guys found personally? Like, wow, this has been.
Question. 3 of the most.
Sunscreen.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious. So I think that like podcasts and stuff and some media like music and stuff is always really good because it's a way to pass the time.
A golf wrench finder.
which
which you use for golf to measure the distance.
it sounds
Okay.
On the water, it is very difficult to estimate the distances to the rocks or to other boats. And so with a golf rangefinder, you always have the exact distance.
We
And
use
that's-
it all the time, and we say it to people, and they're like, "What?" And then they realize,
Yeah, it's
that,
like, what?
it's really useful.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah, and warm clothes.
Yeah,
Warm clothes.
like merino underwear.
Yeah. Because even on hot
Basically.
days, it can get chilly when you're off
At
on the
night,
water
is it?
sailing. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. And for couples looking to transit into this lifestyle, right? What would be the most important thing to consider? I guess this is more of a summary of the thing, but
Yeah.
if you have
Yeah.
to pick like something being the most important.
Don't make it a big production, right? You probably have this giant goal of crossing oceans and going sail to the South Pacific, but take it little by little. Start small. Go on. The day that you leave the dock, don't make it a giant production. Just go down the road, down the river, down the lake, and
Just take it every little bit at a time.
every little bit at a time. It's a long-term sailing. The world is a long-term commitment. So just don't make it a big production. Take it step by step.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, I think, because I can imagine people are excited to do it, but then obviously if you just jump into the deep end, that might be slightly dangerous, it sounds. All right, cool. Thanks guys for coming on. And like if everyone, the listeners want to follow you guys or like follow your adventures, find out how the dog is doing, what's the lifestyle changes, where do they go to seek you guys out?
If you Google Ryan and Sophie Sailing, you'll definitely find our YouTube channel. We
And our
also
website.
and we also have a website. We're also on Instagram, and I am not ashamed to say that even our dog has an Instagram these days.
That's really fast. You guys are really quick about the dog. And is the course that you guys are doing, will it be on the same website, or are you guys doing a separate website for it?
It will be on a different website, but there'll be links through all of our media channels to how to get to that course. Yep.
Awesome. And when does it launch? Do you guys have like a rough estimated date that it's going to pop on?
Yeah.
November 10th.
November 10th will be, the course will launch in 3 segments. So there'll be 1, 2, and 3. And the first part will launch November 10th, the second part before Christmas, and the third part just after the first of the year timeframe.
Wow, okay, that's interesting. And that sounds like quite a massive course then.
It's been a big, it's 10 hours long and many, how many chapters?
It's 30, it's 3 parts, 8 chapters, 37 videos, and all the videos are between 15 minutes and 1 hour.
Wow, okay, that's long. That's long.
Yeah.
There is a lot to learn, but you can do it at your own pace. Also, it's really for everybody, whether you've been, dreaming of sailing the world for a very long time or you're completely new to the activity, there is something for everybody in that. So
That's interesting. So it's both for people who want to try the sailing lifestyle and also content creators.
Well, if you want to create content, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing specifically for content creators in that course, but
it's all just getting into the lifestyle of sailing.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I'll plug the links in the description notes for anyone looking to follow up with you guys for sure. And thank you guys. Thank you for coming on today. Like this was fun.
Thank you so much, Rex. Thanks.